In the land of the north, where the wind blows cold, there's the blood of a Viking in the young and the old. Out on distant shores, making echoes in time, we'll be here forever, we never die.
Good evening, everybody.
Good.
Gives me shivers.
It did. Did you like my singing?
I didn't hear it. You're muted.
Oh, hard to remember the lyrics to that. I got to tell you.
Yes.
But, yeah. How are you, Liz?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good here. Just relaxing here in my study. It's a beautiful day here in the neighborhood, and I just got a bit of new orange furniture.
Yes, looks very nice. I like the ravens behind you.
Thank you. We're having miserable weather here in Pennsylvania, and you'll be delighted to know. And I hear from my mother that there've been lots of rainbows and sunshine and hot weather over there. So how about that?
Yes. It's been beautiful over here, yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, our time will come, I suppose. And that's one thing. I guess you've got to sort of it's part of the course. Certainly with Northern Europe, I love Scandinavia and countries. I love the people. I love the culture. I love all of it. And clearly, but okay, Captain Obvious. But the weather kind of goes with it too. And
yeah,
oh my goodness, those Swedes and Norwegians, and they must have some serious cold weather and snow. Forget about it.
Proper snow.
Proper.
Yeah.
So that's why, years ago when Agneta Falskog, begged me to come and move to her horse farm in Ekero, that I said, Agneta, I said, apart from anything else, I said, I couldn't deal with the snow, and I know nothing about horses. So, yeah, she's still trying to get over it. You
couldn't put it up with her? Oh, dear.
No. I was going to make an ABBA joke, but I don't. But she still looks great for 70-something. You know what I mean? She still looks fantastic for 70-something. Anyway.
Yes, slightly off topic there.
Slightly off topic. So I had to start watching Vikings again the other day. And because, Vikings. If you've seen, has anyone out there, let's have a look and see if we've got anyone on yet. Oh, Nando. I love Nando. He's such a great guy. He's one of my favorite people over there. And yourself, of course. And StreamYard. He's a lovely bloke too. It's a good old StreamYard. And
not met him, no.
Yeah, streamer. But yeah, so I started watching it again because it's such a great series, and there's a lot of. I thought it'd be fun this live to talk about some of the references, the places, connect some of the references of the places that we're going to with the juicy bits, some of them that we saw on the show.
Yes. Yes. It's what the tour is about.
Yes. Yeah. And that's just really, I think, what excites me the most. Because it's one thing to get excited and all psyched up and, excited about watching a bunch of actors, however exciting and all the rest of it. There's another thing to actually go there where not the actors, where the people, pillaged and things, and put your hands on it. Yeah. And stole and beaten and killed and all those great things. Yes. You can come and join Liz and I as we take you to all the places where our fellow countrymen were murdered and beaten. And
I'm sorry, but I'm pretty much mainly Scandinavian from both sides of my family. Both my father and my mother's side, we're inbred in immigrants, shall we say?
Oh,
we were the rapers and the pillagers.
Okay, interesting. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've got kind of I have pigmentation issues, so I'm definitely from the northern Europe. I might, I know I have some Nordic blood. I just did one of those test things where you swap your. So I'll wait and see. Next live that we do, I'll tell you that I am 87% Jamaican. And you were like, what? Get your money back.
Yeah, I'm Danish and Norwegian, which is why I've got blue eyes and dark hair, because the Danes have got blue eyes and dark hair. That's a Danish thing. So I love it. I loved it. I've only been once, and only I went to, it was in Aalborg, and I was in Copenhagen. Saw the little the sort of city within a city where people, homeless people sort of live. I forget what it was called, but it was just sort of like a box city, but not in boxes. Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah. And I've been to Denmark, I've been to Finland and Iceland. Obviously, I love Iceland.
Iceland and Finland are right up there on my bucket list.
Finland is unbelievable, especially when you get way out into nowhere. But anyway, we're not going to any of those places. We're staying in Britain. We're staying in England, in fact. Yeah, and we're going to some incredibly historic places.
Yeah, so I mean, there's I know we were talking just now about a few of them right off stage right before we came on. One of the places that we're going to, that really has got me going, is where Egbert, King of Wessex, lived, in Winchester, and so and not only that, but so let's go there first, because I'm all so excited about this.
Well, it was actually the capital. It was the capital city before London became the capital. Winchester was the main administrative capital city of the whole of what is now England.
Okay, all right. So really, London would have been sort of like a small little settlement, insignificant settlement. Yeah.
It was a trading port. The Romans established it as a trading port. Well, I think
think it was the Iron Age had it as a trading port before that, but it wasn't a particularly big city as we think of it. And it wasn't very easily defendable, which is why Wessex had their capital at Winchester, because
And
that
it's
was
a lot more sort of central if you think about it. It's a lot more. It makes a lot more sense than as far as fortification, right? You know,
yeah.
I mean,
In London, you just sail up the river and you're there.
Yeah, yeah.
As Paris found out.
As Paris found out. Yeah, I was going to say, and Rollo, that bloody, I mean, he's a bit of a traitor, really, you know, to his, you know, but you can't really blame him. I mean, you know, I mean, have you tasted French food? I mean, it's just, and you know, all the wine and the debauchery that, and the jewels and all the rest of it. But like, yeah, as far as places where we're going to, these are places that were essentially attacked by the Vikings, and so in a way, our because there were how many kings at the time? In the late 800s?
Of England, there were 4.
So
5.
all of those troops from all of those different kingdoms had to sort of come together to repel.
No, they didn't. That was the whole problem.
That they because right. So they, but what I'm saying is, if they had, they could have repelled, you know, the attacks. But you know, ego gets in the way.
Which is what happened when Aethelwulf, Ecgbert's son, he combined some of the kingdoms because Ecgbert did some of it.
Yeah.
Aethelwulf was basically the first king of England. And then his son Alfred lost a bit and then got it all back again. Yeah. Which is why Alfred managed to get rid of the Vikings, because he brought the whole of the country together, all of the kingdom's troops, all 5 kingdoms' troops all together against the Vikings. So that's why he succeeded.
And that's and but just the one time, right? You know, and then boy did they get pissed after that. Come back.
Well, they tried to come back again, hence with 1066, the whole Norman conquest. The only reason I think Harold Godwinson lost, was because he marched all the way up to Stamford Bridge to see off a Dane.
Okay.
So he battled Harold Hardrada because the Vikings.
Yeah.
Easy for you to say, yes. He came over from Scandinavia and tried to make an incursion into Britain again. So Harold Godwinson marched all the way up to Stamford Bridge to get rid of them. He then had to march all the way down to Hastings because William the Conqueror had come over. Right. So his troops were wounded. They were absolutely exhausted. Half of them were injured. He then had to take on the Norman force and lost. So yeah. So
he was related. So wasn't Bill, the Conqueror, wasn't he like related to Rollo, who was related?
Yes.
And so
yes.
and we now did he spend, how much time did he spend like in York, for example?
William the Conqueror or Rollo?
Rollo
spent a lot of time in York because York was like when the Vikings came over, they established themselves in Northumbria.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's watched the Last Kingdom TV show will know that little bit. That kind of happens after the Viking show. So Rollo and Ragnar and Ivar and Floki, they spent quite a lot of time in York because York was the big city, the capital city of Northumbria.
Okay.
So it was the Viking capital city in Britain. And it was Wessex and Mercia, who were the last 2 kingdoms in Britain that held off against the Vikings.
Okay.
So Rollo spent quite a bit of time in York.
Yeah, I mean, the North, they know how to fight.
You know, they really do. You know,
As
and
subsequent kings found out.
oh, absolutely. And so there are different conflicting. I looked online. You know, there are some people that claim, oh, you know, we know where the snake pit was. You know, we know where Ragnar was. But I mean, like, how can you possibly know unless that was documented? Which it wasn't documented, right? It sort of what
No.
happened to him was and how he met his end, but not where.
No, we know it was in Northumbria somewhere because King Aila was the one who executed Ragnar. So
Yeah.
it was somewhere in Northumberland, Northumbria. And
Yeah.
it was with the pit of snakes because that's documented, although that's kind of tenuous because it's in the sagas, so it may be a little exaggerated.
But probably at least a pit with spikes in it, you know, and something like
the
that.
snakes was a nice. They were very good at coming up with tortuous way of killing people back then.
Yeah. What a great time to be alive, not. Yeah, like, I mean, this is before TV, so I mean, you start to get a little bit bored. Oh, let's put someone to death. And
let's go watch a witch burning or a hanging or a Viking being crucified or whatever.
And you know and then you know hundreds of years later we got Wes Craven and you know Mr. Carpenter and
Saw movies.
There's 4 movies, yeah, and all the rest of it. So now tell me, tell everybody a little bit about Repton, because that's another place that we're going to that I'm really looking forward to going.
Yes. So Repton was kind of right on the border between Northumbria and Wessex and Mercia.
Okay.
So it was right on the boundary where the Vikings were incurring into English soil. Up in Derbyshire, and Repton was the burial place of the Northumbrian kings back in the Viking times.
Okay.
So where we're going is we're going to Repton Church. There aren't any big tombs anymore like there is at Westminster Abbey, unfortunately, but we do know the crypt, which is still there, was used by the Northumbrian kings. They did a series of excavations around Repton Church, and they found what was a burial mound. And underneath this burial mound was what looks like a Christian charnel house. So it's a pagan burial mound on top of a Christian charnel house.
Wow, that's sacrilegious.
Well, if it's there, why not make use of it? So in there, they discovered a skeleton who was 6'6". He was a big guy, bearing in mind the average height of a big guy in England was 5'8".
Wow. Yeah, even by today's time.
Yeah, they've done the radioisotope stuff on his teeth. Mm-hmm. So when you're drinking and eating, the stuff you eat gets laid down in your teeth, and depending on where you are in the globe, gives you different markers in your teeth. So they take some of the teeth and split it all up and go, this is where you're from. So they did that with the teeth of the big guy, and he came from Denmark.
So that could have been one of the Viking leaders, you know. I'm just wondering, you know, like
the main Viking guy who would deserve to be buried in what is a big burial place for kings, who potentially died there. It's not 100% sure. He could have died in Ireland, but we're laying claim to him at Repton. He's Ivar the Boneless.
Wow.
So
in
the grounds of Repton Church potentially was the burial mound of Ivar the Boneless. Also within the grounds of the church was another pit with a lot of decapitated males who had war wounds And again, they've done the radioisotopic analysis, and they were all Scandinavian. So bearing in mind this border moved backwards and forwards. There was a big battle. The Vikings lost. So the Christians went, oh, we'll throw them all in a pit, decapitate them so they don't go to Valhalla or heaven. But they recognized kings. So he was given a kingly burial. Ivar was given a kingly burial. Outside of Repton, there is another place that we're going to, which was the Viking side of the border.
Right.
And there's basically a barrow cemetery. So all those that they managed to rescue off the battlefield, the dead Vikings and the ones who died of their injuries, were buried in a Viking style in this barrow cemetery. And we're going there as well.
Now, who buried them?
The Vikings.
They buried their own there. So they weren't wiped out like in one go. You know, it was like they buried there. So they had so they went, went to Valhalla, and one of the things that I was wondering is, getting into the science and stuff, which I love, and I know nothing about, is DNA. Did they extract were they able to extract DNA from some of these remains? And specifically, I'm asking that, just taking a step back to potentially Ivar's remains. Would they not have been able to, if they could do that, see how that person looked, if they had blue eyes, if they had long hair, if they were blonde, if they were
you can tell whether somebody's got ginger hair.
Okay.
You can tell whether somebody's got blue eyes.
What if they were, could you be able to tell if they were had some kind of handicap, like physical handicap? Because
if it was genetic, yes.
Yeah.
If it wasn't a genetic disease, then probably not.
How true is it? Do we know if that he was partially, crippled?
We don't know. We don't know why boneless. It might have been because he was very flexible. It might have been because he had a big member, because the Vikings were very good at double entendre jokes.
Now I'm regretting I asked that.
It might have been because he was physically disabled and couldn't walk. We don't know.
Okay, so that's speculation, really. Just fascinated by that. I had another question about, so when they buried their own. Okay, presumably until there were like a couple of people left, and then they themselves were thrown into the mass grave. Are we going to see the daggers? The daggers and the other trinkets and coins and everything that they've unearthed, and people like yourself, archaeologists, have uncovered and put on display.
There was. You don't tend to bury a sword because that's a lot of money to bury.
Yeah.
Unless it's somebody who hasn't got children, or it was a sword that was broken or something like that. You had to be very important from a very rich family to have your sword buried with you, because it was like being buried in your Ferrari.
Yeah.
Or in your, I don't know, beach house in Santa Monica or wherever.
Right.
It was a lot of money to just bury.
Staggering, amount of resources to make a sword back then. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
All right. Now.
So you were always buried with your wrist, your arm rings, because they were the one that your arm rings. you basically earned arm rings depending on how many battles you won.
Okay.
So you were given your first arm ring, like shown in Vikings, where you become a man by pledging your oath to your lord, and you get
Okay.
your first arm ring. You can
Okay.
then take others in battle. So if you kill a king, you get his arm ring, which is why some of them were pewter, some of them were silver, some of them were gold. Vikings weren't that keen on gold, but the more arm rings you wore, the better a warrior you were.
Wow.
And somebody with a lot of arm rings would get a following. So in the Last Kingdom, where Uhtred is basically dispossessed of everything except for his name, people knew his name because he'd won so many battles and he'd won so many arm rings. So you were being able to provide for your men, because that's the only way your men got paid, was pillaging and stealing stuff. And if you had a good lord, they would give you hack silver or steal stuff off the dead on the battlefield, so you could come away with a nice Saxon sword, because the Saxon steel was like second to none. Saxon swords were way better than anything the Vikings could make. So you wanted a Saxon sword, but you take the faffy, girly, golden garnet blur off it, and you put something Viking on there, like amber, which the Vikings liked, or tortoiseshell or coral. The gold and the garnet was tradable, which is why a lot of the hoards, which we may also go and see one of, contain a lot of the gold and garnet, because the Vikings weren't interested in wearing it or adapting it for themselves. It wasn't their fashion. It was too girly for them. But the sword itself, they wanted the steel. They wanted the Saxon steel, because they didn't know how to make it.
I can't tell you how much I want to put my hands on some of these items. I mean, you probably can't, right? Behind glass. I mean, although you probably have some secrets in there that you're being an archaeologist.
I'm going to see what my contacts will find for me, because I know a few archaeologists who worked on the Staffordshire hoard.
I mean, how spiritual it is to when you're tactile, oftentimes you can actually feel like the same with the bricks and mortar effect, that sort of like what I call hard drive effect, the
psychometry.
Psychometry. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So psychometry, have you actually experienced psychometry from the places that we're going, by touching these ancient sites?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Walking down into the crypt at Repton Church is it's like going into Stonehenge or into a stone circle. It has the same kind of effect physically.
Wow.
For me, the Barrow graveyard, the Barrow cemetery that we're going to, was a really profound experience, because you can go and stand next to one of these burial mounds and put your hands on the earth and feel the spirit of the dead warrior, basically.
Wow. It's really extraordinary. I mean, the sheer the valiance, I mean, to really, you see these armies and they're charging out, and I mean, they're not like the armies of the day where you can, like, from a mile away, or like mortar or missiles and stuff. They're face to face, hand to hand combat. It just blows my mind how the size of the stones you must have to be able to force yourself to run into a horde of people armed with swords, daggers, and on horseback and so on and so forth. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, were there very many women that came to these battles, or did they stay back with the encampments, to patch up the wounded and stuff?
In Britain, we don't actually have any shield maidens' graves that we've found. So all the burials, I mean, we don't actually have that many Viking burials that have been uncovered. There is one or two mass graves from when there was basically a genocide. One of the kings went, we want to get all the Viking. If you're Viking, if your parents were Viking, you're dead. And they exterminated everybody who had Viking descendancy. And there's two mass burials, and that's men, women, and children. But in terms of shield maidens buried with full armor, well, with shield and axe or spear or sword or whatever, we don't actually have any in Britain that we've discovered so far.
Okay.
There are more and more being uncovered or rediscovered, shall we say, in Scandinavia, because it used to be, I mean, when I was at university reading archaeology, it was presumed there were male graves and female graves, depending on what they were buried with. Okay. So if you were buried with a sword and a helmet and a shield, you were male. And if you were buried with beads and brooches and toiletry set, you were female. Because of the advances in science, they are going back and looking at these graves again and what the skeleton was, or if the skeleton even survives. Because places like Sutton Hoo, there is no skeleton.
Right.
The acid eats it away. So
right.
They're going back and going, can we definitely say for sure this was a male burial? Yes, it had a spear, it had a shield, it had a sword, but can we for sure say it was male? And I know of 5 that were originally put down as male burials, and they've now looked at what remains of the skeleton and have said, no, they are female. One of which was a huge ship burial. So she was buried in a huge Viking longboat. Wow. With everything. She was very, very powerful, like Lagertha.
Yeah.
So she'd got all her feasting stuff. She'd got 2 horses that were killed to go with her. There was a cart. There was all of her weaponry. So she had a sword, she had a dagger, she had an axe, she had a shield, and she had a spear. So she was on to the teeth with her in the grave.
Yeah.
She also had her mother.
Yeah. With her?
Yes.
In the grave? Wait, yes. They killed the mother to go. So
we don't know.
So like the ancient Egyptians did the same thing so that they'd be ready for the underworld.
Well, the whole thing about Valhalla is that you go to Valhalla with what you've got, which is why you have to die with your hand on your weapon to get into Valhalla.
So I imagine that, like, the servants and stuff, when they were about to go into battle, were trying their best to get fired, and I'm a terrible servant, horrible. You don't want to be, did I drop the wine again? Sorry.
Except it was an honor to go with your lord to Valhalla.
Yeah, I guess.
Because that's the only way as a slave you were going to get into Valhalla, really. So there's actually a documented record from a Muslim writer. He saw a Viking funeral of a Viking king, and he actually records that the female servants actually got into a fist fight to get the privilege of being killed and being buried with their lord.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're raised from dot, to believe that's what you believe, that's what you want, and
well, most of them were slaves. Most of them were captured from Ireland or Britain or some other place that like Athelstan in the Viking show. He was very lucky that Ragnar picked him. Otherwise, he'd have just been a slave and been sent to work in the pigs.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Most slaves had a bad life, and if you died, they just got another one. So if you were going to go to Valhalla with your lord, that was a huge privilege.
Right.
Also, from a non-Norse pagan point of view, it put an end to your suffering on Earth.
That's nice. You mentioned Athelstan, and so of course he wasn't he the he became a monk, right? Or he was a monk, and then he was kidnapped, right? Are we going anywhere near there?
Yes, we are. We're going to actually the monastery where Athelstan was kidnapped from. The first place in Britain the Vikings set foot on British land, at Lindisfarne. And it's still there. The monastery is still there.
I'm like, I want to be there right now. The questions, I mean, of course they're not going to understand a word I'm saying. But you speak Old Norse, right? A little?
Yeah.
In Beitcha. But that's why I always I don't know. There's conflicting opinions, you know. It's tough as a I've had spirit come through to me, and in Italian, in French, in German, and you know, but there, you know, a lot of theories that people. I suppose it depends if spirit is presenting to you, you know, how I mean, it's a universal language. I mean, but charades sort of springs to mind. But I saw a video where they went through the ages and they said the dates of people talking Old English. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
And it's crazy because you can make out the odd words here and there, and it's Germanic essentially, right, by origin, all of it.
Yeah.
So
and there's different little bits that of Old Norse that we would understand.
Really?
Because modern English is an amalgamation of Old English, medieval French, Latin, and Viking.
I did not know. It's also a great band. I'll stop the world and melt with you.
So things like place names. There are place names that are Viking, and you can tell the difference between a Saxon place name and a Viking place name because of the language. Things like egg is French. Earth.
What would they have said
chicken?
Okay.
Chicken is Saxon.
Okay. And
if you talk about the difference between pork and pig meat, you're talking the difference between Norman and Saxon. So the Normans gave us all the finery, the pork, whereas the Saxons just went pig.
Step to the name. Yeah.
and
some of it stuck.
Some of it stuck, yes, because it's modern, it's language. Right. But things like I found out recently, all these waterfalls up in northern England are called Force, Force. So High Force is one of the big waterfalls up in Northumbria.
Yeah.
I was like, well, where's Force come from? Is it like the force of the water? You look at the Icelandic word for waterfall. It's Foss.
Oh, it's force. So that's where that came from. So that's extraordinary. That, you know, that left its imprint permanently.
Yeah, and Icelandic is the closest modern language to Old Norse. So that's why I'm learning Icelandic.
So really, then would the Vikings, if you were talking modern day Icelandic to a Viking spirit, he or she would understand?
Mostly,
You know?
yes.
Mostly,
yes.
pretty much get the gist.
Yes.
So I am going to start my Icelandic. There's what's a good app for learning another language? Because I bet you everyone who's coming on our trip in June is gonna be like, okay, yeah, want to do this too. What's a good app for that?
I will say there are no apps that I have found, especially ones that are free, that do Icelandic. So
Oh,
things
okay.
like Duolingo don't do Icelandic.
No Rosetta Stone.
I've got an Icelandic teacher. I've signed up with an Icelandic guy, an
Oh,
Icelander.
well, of course you do. Yeah, we're all fancy now on us. All right.
Well,
So,
yeah. My aim is to read the sagas in the Old Norse. I actually have a copy in Old Norse, and my aim is to read them. And you can pick bits out because, like I say, the modern English has little bits of Old Norse buried within it.
I can't imagine.
Not
how
even
magical.
Tolkien could read Icelandic or Norse.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. So Icelandic people can read and make sense of a lot of that.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that's got to be amazing. That's got to be amazing.
Well,
really.
it's the same. You think of like the isolation. You think of marsupials on Australia because they're isolated. They stay there and they don't evolve. The same with the Icelandic language because they're on a little island and
no little
they
influence.
didn't get. Yeah.
Well, we appear to have.
Different language. The word in Icelandic for computer is number wizard. I just think that is just perfect.
Really, that's incredible. Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's not quite as guttural, like for example, as German or Dutch.
No.
And
You have to roll your R's.
see that I could never do. I'm tongue tied. Yeah. I have to sound like a dog growling or something like that is the best I can do there. Now, so one of the things that one of the other things that I'm wondering is is any of the sort of quote unquote treasure put on display? I know that because when you watch Vikings, you see all this gold and silver. I mean, there's so much of it. I mean, obviously, a lot of it made its way back across. It made its way across the water. So, but how much of that was recovered? Any of it?
There is still, well, they're hoards. Like the famous one is the most recent famous one is the Staffordshire hoard, which was found not very far from where I live. And it is a load of Anglo-Saxon gold and garnet, shield fittings, weaponry, bits and pieces. And everybody calls it the Saxon hoard. Okay. Well, it's a hoard of Saxon things, but a Saxon guy would not have buried it. It would have been buried by a Viking.
Okay.
So it's treasure from battle or treasure from some pillage somewhere. And the Vikings gone, well, I'm going back into battle tomorrow, so I want to keep this safe, so I'm going to bury it.
Right.
And I also don't want Chummy, my rival Viking king, to know where it is. So I'm going to hide it somewhere he's not going to find it. So I'm not going to put it in the hall underneath the big dais, which is where most people put the hoards, which is depicted in Vikings and The Last Kingdom. So he's buried it somewhere that's turned into a field. And this is now split between 2 museums, and you can go and see it. And it is stunningly beautiful. I mean, a lot of it's bent and twisted, but it is just gorgeous.
I can't. I'm like beside myself, like looking forward to this trip. I think, and what a great way to for a first timer. Like if you've not been to the UK, what a fantastic way to lose your cherry, you know, and
Yes.
that historic immersion into history.
And it's not the places Americans tend to go either.
Right.
Most Americans come to Britain for the first time and they go to London, they go to Stratford-upon-Avon, they go to Stonehenge.
Bath.
We're not going to any of those places.
Okay.
You're landing in London, and you can spend some time there before or after the tour if you want to, but that's not part of the tour. We're going to places out in the middle of nowhere that if you're not an archaeologist or a history buff, you don't know anything about.
You wouldn't
I
even
mean,
know
how
that.
many Americans can say they've been to Lindisfarne or Bamborough Castle or Winchester or Repton or...
It really is. It seems like that series really has just completely blown up all interest in the Vikings, you know, and in the, not just, you know, in battle, but in their communities, how they lived, what, you know, their cultures, you know, their you know, these, we forget a lot of the time. We think of Viking, we think of, oh, you know, but these were raising their children. You know, these were communities where, you know, they had like what, schools, really, sort of like the church. And were schools back then very much a part of community, and also in terms of their religion, sort of go together cohesively like that, or?
Religion was kind of passed on, and because it was stories, that's where the sagas come from.
Right.
The stories of the gods coming to Earth and interacting with the humans, because that's what the Viking gods did. They wandered in and went, all right, mate, I need somewhere to stay. And if you said, oh, no, sorry, then you were turning a god away. So a lot of the way of life was bound into the religion, and that was passed on through telling the stories. So a lot of the sagas of the great kings, of the gods, of the battles, of the way bad things happened to people who didn't do things properly, and good things happened to people who did things properly. It was all told in the stories. So think of Jackanory and the fairy tales that we had when we were kids, and learning about, you don't go sneaky into the woods into somebody's cottage because you eat the bear's porridge, and then that's not very good.
No, you know how that ends.
Or Hansel and Gretel getting kidnapped by the witches. You stay away from strange women in the woodland.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And
so like euphemism.
You stay away from witches because they're bad because they're not Christian.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of bound together. So it wasn't school as we think of school. And a lot of it would be learnt from watching your parents and the rest of the village do stuff, because it took a village. So while the guys and some of the women were off raiding, there would be a group who would stay at home and look after the kids, and they'd learn how to weave, they'd learn how to look after the animals, how to farm, how to make sure the house didn't fall down. And
right. So, in the same sense, mythology and religion were sort of a social policing system that people adhered to, or there
and
were
law. They would go to the tings, which was the law hearings. The kids would be going to and seeing the Lord dispatch the law, and they'd be gathered around in the village green and find out, well, Daddy, why did that man have his head chopped off? Well, this is what he did. He killed somebody and didn't tell didn't tell the other neighbours, because you were allowed to go past 2 houses. If you killed somebody, accidentally or otherwise, you were allowed to go past 2 houses before you raised the hue and cry. That's where that comes from. You had to report the death by at least the 3rd house. You were allowed to skip 2 houses in case the relatives lived in neighbouring houses. If you hadn't done it by the 3rd house, you were automatically under suspicion of murder. If you reported it sooner, you can go, well, it was self-defense. You obviously don't have to prove it. But this was the kind of thing, it was written into the laws. And the tings, which is where Nottingham comes from.
That's where
it was
that
a law
comes
centre.
from. Yes. Wow. That is extraordinary. This is all just so fascinating. I think that and one of the things that you mentioned before, and this is it's all such a great tour. I mean, but at the end, that we get to feast like Vikings on Viking food, on what would have essentially been how it would have been prepared back then. This is no
as close as we can without poisoning people, obviously. But
here, pass the chicken, will you? Okay, all right.
Yes, we'll have some fermented shark with that, please.
Oh no, thank you. No, thank you. Woo, whiffy.
But this is the other thing about going with a Norse archaeologist. I can unpick the little bits and say, oh, by the way, that's because of this. It's the little tiny pieces that kind of all develop the huge story.
Hi, Angie. Hi, Gemma. Hi, Thomas. Oh, Thomas, you saucy thing. No, Thomas. Yeah. I hope you're all going to come along the trip. I mean, just wow. I mean, when you joined us, but this is really bucket list stuff, right, Liz?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I love going. I've been to most of these places multiple times, and I still love going back.
So we have, and what I like about this tour is it's not 30, 40 people, you know, it's like, it's a nice intimate group of people, you know, and we don't have to share you too much, you know.
Nor you.
No, but yeah, that's right. Well, I'm all about sharing. Well, that's another story. Okay.
Well, the Vikings were into that kind of thing as well, you know.
They were saucy buggers. They were, yeah. I mean, anything really sort of goes. That's the only reason why I think I might be. I'm very tame in that. Let's change the subject. And you know, the thing is, they weren't unlike us in a lot of ways, right? They just had the same. You know, they bled the same. They wept the same. They loved. They were they like romantic people? You know, what would?
I don't know. There are stories about like winning the hand of the fair maid. So the gods would woo the goddesses,
right,
and would bring presents, and there was a certain way you treated your woman and the way a woman treated their man, but it was a very equal society. The women had as much power as the man.
Wow. Okay.
A woman, if she had enough of you, she could divorce you. No problem at all.
Not the case at all across the water, really, at all, right? Because and that's stayed with the Scandinavian states, right? Because if you think about it, and it's Iceland the same, Greenland, Iceland, Denmark, Norway, you know, a lot of female premiers
and politicians and leaders, of there just for centuries, and there have been. So I guess emancipation really sort of found its way from that culture in that regard, partly.
Yeah, I'm going to get into trouble for saying this, but Christianity made us take a step back in Britain. The Romans were fairly emancipated. The Vikings were fairly emancipated. It wasn't until we predominantly converted to Christianity that the women became the lesser half of the community.
Right.
Women had to know their place. But
So-
before that, it was, if you were good enough for a job, it didn't matter whether you were male or female. On the battlefield, in the home, in the farms, if you were good enough to do the job, you did it.
That's absolutely fantastic tour. I think one of the things that struck me is this is really affordable, to a lot of people. And where can people find out more information about, this great trip that we're going to take people on?
Across the bottom, I have a little ticker tape thing with the website.
Phantasm
So
Tours.
phantasmtours.com/store. And if you go into the store, there is a little section there that's got the tours, and the Viking tour is one of those. There is an option to pay all of it up front. If you don't want to do that, or you can't afford to do that, you can put a deposit down and get in touch. Or if you put the deposit down, I will get in touch with you to work out your payment plan. If the deposit is too much, we can sort something out. So drop me a message via the website. And I do take payment in dollars.
Okay. Well,
Dollars isn't.
there's a, and like you said at the beginning, if people want to come, people want to arrive, like a couple of days before the rendezvous with us, then they can do so, right? And see some of London,
or stay
really
afterwards. They can also pay me to do a private tour if they want extra. They can get in touch and I can sort out an extra week for them, just for them. Obviously you've got other commitments, so you'll be jetting off home, but if they want an added extra, or because the flights aren't included, it's basically pick up from an airport a hotel next to the airport.
Okay, and that's Heathrow, right?
Heathrow Airport, yes. If you do come into another airport for whatever reason, get in touch and I can work you through getting to where you need to get to. That's not a problem. I'm from here. I know how to travel around here quite easily, so it's not a huge issue. If you want to come and do Stratford-upon-Avon, fly into Heathrow, come up to Stratford, I can help you work those details out.
And your connections and all the rest of it. That's fantastic. Great way to, whether you've been to the UK or you haven't, it's a fantastic tour, and I know that it's going to be just amazing, really, from every standpoint, historically and otherwise.
And even if you live in the UK, I'm going to be taking you to places that you will not have visited. I can guarantee.
That was not one of my questions that I had coming as well. Is that because it's all it's inclusive of the hotels and then the tours, the admissions, the entries, all of that stuff. People can come regardless where they are. They don't have to be just in the United States. They could be Brits. They could be in Ireland, Scotland, France, anywhere.
And if you want to meet up for us for a couple of days, that can be sorted out as well. I can work out how much it would be for, I don't know, like to do Lindisfarne. I did it on the last tour. We had a couple of people join us for the weekend. So if you're in the UK and you can't get a whole week off work, that's not a problem. Just get in touch and we'll work out something for you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, and I know that we'll be going live again before the actual date. We've still got a couple of months out, so Liz will furnish you with any information that you need, and if that's not on her website at phantasmtours.com/store, and yeah, if you're whether you are a well-versed historian like Liz, and you know, or you're just simply want to be immersed in ancient history of you know, England, it's a great trip all around.
And give me a follow on Facebook, Phantasm Tours on Facebook. I will be putting bits and pieces on there as we get closer to the tour. You get we'll set up a WhatsApp group when you're on the tour, so you're in constant communication, and we can let you know what's going on, and if there's any problems, you can let me know. So that will be set up before you come over. So if your flight's delayed, you can let me know and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we'll easily coordinate and all the rest of it. And Rob, you were supposed to be down by the coach 10 minutes ago. Where are you? You know, no, you know, if people who don't know us, we've you know, this isn't our first time, you know, together. We've you know, done a couple of gigs together over there in the UK, and it was never a dull moment, girl. It was never a dull moment. At least what I can remember of it, anyway.
I was going to say there's usually lots of alcohol involved,
which of course, I suppose is you know, so it goes with the terrain.
Yeah,
you know,
it's authentic.
They liked their. What did we'll close on this one? What was their beverage of choice? You know, because you hear these things about, well, the water was polluted, so they drank just you know, mead or whatever. But how can you make mead with polluted water anyway? You know, I mean, were there spirits?
They drank a lot of beer, because when you make beer, you boil the water, which cleans the water.
That answers that question.
Mead needs honey. Bees don't like cold. So mead came from the monasteries over in England, which is another thing that the Vikings liked. So there was like 4 or 5 different strengths of beer. There was small beer that they drank every day instead of water.
And the kids drank.
Yeah,
basically.
Bear in mind, there's a lot more pure water over in Scandinavia that's coming straight off the mountains into so they did drink an awful lot more water than they did over in England. But beer was the main alcohol.
Beer was a bit okay, and so not spirits, not so much. I guess that wasn't really around.
I don't know when. I'd have to look that up. I will give myself some homework and find out whether they made vodka.
Thank God. Finally, I've managed to give you a question you don't know the answer to. Oh, that took weeks. And all I can say is cheers. Well, on that note, we'll say, or rather, should I say skull? And I don't have anything to skull you with. Here we go. There's a jar. All right. And I hope you'll join Liz and I for what promises to be a really amazing tour of a lifetime of Viking England.
Yes. Valhalla or bust.
Valhalla or bust. I love that, by the way. I think that was a great name. What a fantastic thing. It might be Valhalla and we are bust, but it's gonna be a great time. Come and join us if you can, and more information, check out the website. Thank you so much, Liz, for having me again. Thank you everyone who came on board. And if you're watching this after the fact, same thing. Check out there's still some places left on the tour. So get yours now, get your deposit in, and start looking forward to swinging that sword come July. Sorry.
The bookings will close in June. So people need to get in before June, and there will be a maximum of 15 on the tour. So it'll be a nice small group.
That is fantastic. That I absolutely love, because those intimate tours, intimate groups. I remember it well than my first tour of Egypt. Anyway, I'm not going to go on with another story. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Liz. Bless
Thank
you,
you.
and talk soon.
And I'm going to run the promo video again because it gives me chills.
Okay.
Run, VT.
In the land of the north, where the wind blows cold, there's the blood of a Viking and the young and the old. Out on distant shores, making echoes in time, we'll be here forever.